This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Straczynski. On today's show, confirmation on something we knew? Maybe? The WWE Network is becoming obsolete. Raw to Netflix, and some concerns after this past weekend's big bout. As well as we've got your full gear go home podcast show. We're going to have predictions. There's a lot to get into with what's taking place on Monday Night Raw and on SmackDown, as we've got Survivor Series and War Games right around the corner. Helping me sort through all of it, discuss all of the concerns, break it all down. He's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
Back, bigger than and better than ever, just like Paul Heyman. I'm ready to rock and roll with this week's podcast, man. It was nice to take a little bit of a week off to settle in and see and watch deeper some of the ways in which AEW, WWE have been conducting business. And it's two different styles, but at the same token, both companies are trying to do their things to advance storylines, and WWE has been really putting out some great content in regards to storylines and swerves and tying things together, man. It's just been crazy. And then tonight, another pay-per-view where AEW is going to have to really deliver in regards to paying off some of these storylines, because I just don't think that with AEW, at least, that some of their storylines are at least interesting to the viewers at home. I think to Tony Khan it is, but I'm fascinated to see how AEW pulls this off and goes forward. But man, WWE has had themselves a great 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, most definitely. And we're going to get into full gear. We're going to get into some of the stuff with AEW a little bit further back in the show. But this past weekend, we had a massive boxing match take place on Netflix. We had the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. With that fight, if you got to take any of it in, you probably had some broadcast, you probably had some technical issues. There was a lot of buffering. There was a lot of things that kind of come along with streaming that kind of turn people away from streaming. Monday Night Raw and WWE is going to be arguably the biggest thing to hit Netflix in some time. This is going to be the new home of Monday Night Raw, which has been a staple for, 35, 40 some odd years. They do have 2 NFL games before Monday Night Raw launches live on Netflix. What are your thoughts on viewing issues and technical difficulties being associated with Netflix, being associated with Monday Night Raw going forward? People at Netflix have come out and basically said, look, this isn't going to be a problem. We're going to get all this taken care of. They've addressed it with the 2 games that they're going to be hosting for the NFL, saying this isn't going to be an issue. This isn't going to be a problem. But this was a big deal with the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. This was a big deal with a lot of criticism going towards Netflix after last Friday's boxing match.
Yeah, it's intriguing because a lot of people have wondered how Netflix could handle live programming. Well, there's a lot of buffering. I mean, the events that have taken place on Netflix Live have had some kind of issue. I hearken back to the Tom Brady roast. When there's just an increased amount of live viewership to the servers, well, one thing, I don't say they get a pass, but there's no way to kind of predict 60 million people on your server. And that's a lot. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of things that have to go right. I would definitely understand why WWE, the NFL are concerned. Like you said, you made a great point. There's going to be another run where the NFL is going to be on Christmas where they can iron it out. It seems like Netflix officials have kind of said we understood what happened. And sometimes you just realize that, you know what, there's an event so big, let's just fuck up. You know, let's just understand that there could be fuck ups and learn from it so that we can figure it out. How it's kind of like one of those deals where you don't know how many hamburgers to make, but you make like 20 million to save costs, but you realize, oh shit, we needed 60. So then you realize, okay, for next time, it sucks for the viewer, but really in the end, it's a boxing match between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. The landscape of the world, yeah, you're going to take a lot of hit publicity-wise, but it's kind of like one of those deals where you have to say, yeah, they fucked up, but they're going to use it as a learning tool for stuff that's going to be probably even more culturally relevant and longer lasting, like the NFL and WWE. So it's just one of those deals where, Jake Paul and Mike Tyson pulled off the heist of the century and had it on a broadcast that is highlighted by Mike Tyson showing off his ass. It was crazy. It's crazy to think that that's how a major company like Netflix would roll, but I think that they get more publicity for, damn, we got 60 million people on here. People can kind of rationalize, damn, well, we can kind of see why that would crash anybody's system.
Yeah, look, I think you make a lot of valid points, right? It is hard when you're trying to branch into something new, like Netflix doing live TV, trying to branch into something new like that, where you just can't account for the traffic on your server, right? Like you just can't, like how are you going to know that there's going to be 60 million people viewing that? Now, look, I think when it comes time for the NFL football game, there's going to be almost double that, right? Like NFL is king. We do a sports podcast, right? Detroit Sports Podcast is where you're finding this. DocNJock has been the staple show on that podcast network since its inception. So, like, we understand NFL is king. Netflix has to understand that. And I think if you're looking for a good trial run, right? Like the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight, that was a good one. Like you had your training wheels on. I think when you get ready for the NFL on Netflix, that is going to really be where you're going to see a lot of stuff get ironed out, see a lot of stuff get worked out, and them really fine tune what has to be done for Monday Night Raw when it goes to Netflix. And look, WWE pulls in a substantial amount of viewership, but it is nowhere near the 60 million that pulled in for the Jake Paul fight, and it's going to be nowhere near what they're going to pull in for the NFL on Netflix when they have their Christmas Day show. So all of that being said, I don't necessarily know if there needs to be this monster worry about the buffering, about the technical glitches. I think there needs to be some concern because this is going to be a brand new venture for Netflix, and this is going to be a brave new world for Monday Night Raw. But I think things will get ironed out. I think if you do experience technical difficulties, it's going to be something that's going to get ironed out in the first week or two. So it's not going to be that big of a deal going forward. It'll be a big deal in the time. It'll be a big deal for those first two episodes. But I think going forward, everything will be all right. Before we get to Monday Night Raw on Netflix, we do have War Games right around the corner. And we talked about this 2 weeks ago. Me and you were both more on board with a 4-on-4 War Games. We're getting a 5-on-5 War Games match for both the men and the women. With that, I've got some issues with the women's match. We're going to get into that here shortly. But I want to know what you think about Bronson Reed being brought into the fold with the new Bloodline, with the Bloodline 2.0, and now CM Punk, the big announcement that CM Punk on Friday Night SmackDown, he is going to be the fifth member for the OG Bloodline. Somewhere along the line there, we had a little bit of a thing with Seth Rollins that we'll talk about here in a moment. But what do you make of Bronson Reed being added to this match and then CM Punk kind of out of nowhere being added to this match?
Well, they did a good job. They swerved me because I thought if we were going to talk last week, I thought it was going to be Seth Rollins, the fifth man. I just thought that the way in which they hinted at it, the way in which Roman Reigns kind of sold it, that's a good job.
Yeah.
And when
he was the red herring, he was the guy there to kind of throw you off the beaten path that CM Punk was going to be the guy.
It was crazy, man. It was awesome to see, and I was very impressed when they did it. And Paul Heyman came out. It was very intriguing. You had to pay attention. He comes out and he said, "Hey, the math doesn't make sense to me." He then looks back and goes, "It's 5-on-5, and it's CM Punk," and you're like, "Oh man." Now you can also start to extrapolate what could happen in the future. Oh, man. Maybe down the road, a tease of CM Punk versus Roman Reigns. Man, that's just some fun stuff. Some legendary ideas that can be flushed out. So it was great. Bronson Reed kind of does have the feel of the odd man out, but he kind of has that look like the muscle enforcer. So I get it. And that's just a credit to him to work his way up to where the company feels like, hey, you're in the A storyline. So that's awesome to see. And now, like everybody else, I can't wait to see War Games because it's going to be crazy. I thought that the OG Bloodline was able to rise tall on SmackDown, and it made it a good show.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit different than you here, right? So I love the Seth Rollins red herring thing, right? I thought that was fantastic because you thought it was going to be Seth Rollins. Like up until it was CM Punk, you thought it was going to be Seth Rollins. They did a great job with that. Roman did a great job selling that. Sammy did his part to really try to work that in, as well as the Usos. That was a good job. That was awesome. I think Bronson Reed fits more with the Bloodline 2.0 than CM Punk fits with the OG Bloodline. And a couple of reasons why I think Bronson Reed fits a little bit better. I think Bronson Reed has that look where he looks like he could possibly be an Uso, or he could be a cousin of an Uso. Like he looks like he could be part of that family. From the tattoos to just his physical appearance. Like when you see him next to Jacob Fatu, it's not too hard to think like, hey, these guys could be cousins. And like just about every Samoan but Samoa Joe is related to that family. They're related to that bloodline somehow. So to me, aesthetically, he looks like he could fit in that group. And then when it comes to a heel, you don't usually have to make this broad jump to make a heel work, right? Like a heel, for the psychology of a heel, it's kind of like, hey, you want to go do some bad shit? You want to go fuck some stuff up? Yeah, well, come do it with us. We're really good at fucking stuff up and really good at doing bad shit. And for a heel, you're kind of like, okay, cool. That psychology works. They want to go be part of a badder group because they're a bad guy. No big deal. For a babyface, it's a little bit harder. And on Friday Night SmackDown, we didn't really get an explanation why CM Punk is being added to this group. Now, look, if you follow wrestling and you're a wrestling nerd, you're probably listening to this podcast because you're one of them. You understand. CM Punk is the original Paul Heyman guy. Paul Heyman knows CM Punk. Paul Heyman and CM Punk have a huge relationship going back years. He refers to himself as the original Paul Heyman guy. So, if it is one of those things where you're going to have Roman Reigns trusting the wise man because the wise man says, hey, we can trust this guy. I know him. I vouched for him years ago. That's going to be the storyline. To me, that kind of feels paper thin and it feels weak. I don't necessarily like that as far as a babyface psychology. Now, with all that kind of being said and all that stuff kind of being laid out, there were a lot of things that I really liked that Paul Heyman adds to these situations, to these, I guess, moments. If you go back, the last time you've seen Paul Heyman, he had a lot of gray hair. He had this beard that was unkept and was white. He looked ashen. Like he put baby powder on his face to make himself look whiter. He looked old. He looked tired. He looked wore down. You go back to this past Friday, this dude had a tan. This dude had his hair slicked back. This guy looked like he lost about 15 pounds. Paul Heyman looked like he was back in business. And it just goes to show you, it's just little subtle things like that Paul Heyman does, that when he's in a good place, the bloodline is in a good place, and everything is in good working condition, he physically looks like he's in a much better place. When the Bloodline 2.0 was in control, he looked very weathered. He looked beaten down. He looked rough. I thought the very subtle nuances that Paul Heyman adds to these storylines has such a deft hand and is so perfect, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. I kind of brought some stuff up with CM Punk. Does it make sense to you that he is being incorporated into this storyline? Can you allow yourself to do the mental gymnastics to make that connection? And does that psychology work for you? Or are you going to need this following week to have a bit of a follow-up where they have to now explain it to you to make it make sense?
Yeah, no, I do think that it does kind of make sense in a way. Clearly, CM Punk also, there were some situations where he worked with Cody Rhodes to fight off, in a match against, Solo. So there's been a little bit of a tie there. So they've started the process to be able to acknowledge a little bit that CM Punk has some interest in this storyline. And then, yeah, like you said, the tie is clearly Paul Heyman. But yeah, they can definitely tell a story with a segment as to why and things like that. And at the same token, you realize that, man, I do think that they're setting up Roman Reigns, for the basic angle of who gets the wise man. And CM Punk, when he came back, started to reference that maybe he needs the wise man to get back to the mountaintop. And just the very basics is maybe we all think of it from the Roman side, but maybe moving forward, you highlighted a little bit from the CM Punk side as to say, hey, I need just a little bit more to get back to the mountaintop. And I do think that potentially, in a year from now, if you decide to move on from Cody Rhodes as a champion, if you give it back to Roman, you need a feud that's a little bit fresh, and that feud could come back maybe in a year or two to be CM Punk. So, you could always explain more, but at the very basics, starting with this starting point is okay to me.
I gotcha. And I do like where your head's at as far as future booking goes, right? Like you could have a match for the heavyweight championship. I'm not sure what they're calling it nowadays. I forgot. But you could have a match for that strap, and you could have a match for the rights of the wise man between the two. And it would make for a really interesting story. So I do like where your head's at as far as future booking goes. The one thing that I do not like with what we've got going on with Survivor Series and War Games, and it really does come down to booking, it is the women's War Games match. You have these women in this match who a few weeks ago wanted to kill each other. Now they're being teammated up, and is that even a word, teammated up? We're going to go with it. Now they're being put into teams where they've got to now back each other up, and they've got to watch each other's back in this pseudo death match. To me, it doesn't make sense. I don't understand it. If you look at the Nia Jax team, right, and that's what we'll call it, you've got Nia Jax and you've got Liv Morgan. A couple of weeks ago at Crown Jewel, these two women were trying to kill each other for the largest female women's championship you've ever did see in your entire life. And Liv Morgan was able to come away with that. Obviously, Raquel Rodriguez is Liv Morgan's heater. You also have Tiffany Stratton, who is basically buddied up with Nia Jax. To me, those types of things just don't make sense. Where a couple of weeks ago, they wanted to knock each other's block off, and now they're back, and now they're wrestling together. Then you look at the other team. You've got Bianca Belair, Jade Cargill. A few weeks ago, they were in a bit of a dust-up with Io Sky and Damage Control. Now, Io Sky is being incorporated into their group. To me, that just doesn't make sense. Now, Naomi has always kind of had Bianca and Jade's back. That's fine. And then you're going to work in Rhea Ripley, which, okay. A couple weeks ago, she was knocked out of competition because she had a broken orbital bone. I get why she would want to get back in this match to get back at Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez. But the team pairing of all of this just doesn't make sense to me when they just a couple of weeks ago were trying to kill each other and trying to take things from each other. And now you're going to be best friends in this match where legit crazy things happen. And look, I understand why you want to add somebody like Io Sky. One of the highlight moments was Io Sky climbing up to the top of the cage, throwing a garbage can on her head, and then throwing herself through a table with a body laid out on it. One of the greatest moments in War Games history. I understand why you want to add her to this match. Just storyline-wise, it doesn't make sense. And psychology-wise, to me, it just doesn't make sense. So I don't get what we're doing here. And look, I understand that you want to be fair. You want to give everybody, give the men and the women a War Games match. I understand it. I just sometimes feel like some of these storylines are a little bit pushed. They're a little bit rushed. They're not thought out as in depth as what Triple H does when he's putting matches together. This seems like it was very, very rushed. It was one of those things where it was like, well, men's got a War Games match. Now we got to give the women one too. Well, shit, what do we got going on? Looks at roster. Well, these have been our biggest storylines. Let's just throw them all in a match and we'll just make it work and figure it out. To me, that doesn't work. I'm wondering if you're seeing the same thing or if you had the same thought when you're watching these teams kind of build themselves up in the middle of the ring on Friday or on Monday Night Raw, and we're getting announcements of who is going to be on which team.
Yeah, I put in my notes that this one has this angle has the task of explaining to me what the heck's going on. And I thought of you, I said, this doesn't make much sense, right? You have, blood feuds 2 weeks ago and now you got to work together. So I just think that for the sake of war games. They kind of just, and that's what kind of I think people have noticed is that with the women, the storytelling is a little bit more like just whatever, just thrown up and done just for the sake of doing it. And with the men, that's where there's a distinct difference. There's a lot of backstory, a lot of reasons why, a lot of explanation that a lot of people can manufacture. Like with CM Punk, if you remember, because Paul Heyman asked to be saved when he was going through that struggle with Roman Reigns, and who came out? It was CM Punk. So you can start to kind of bridge and maybe even if you're not exactly accurate, you can maybe make some realistic ties. This doesn't make any sense. And you're just like, okay. But I am curious, based on what happened on SmackDown, who the hell threw Jade Cargill through the car? That's a nice visual. I mean, to give them a little bit of aggression and to see her laid out like that was very unique. It was visually stunning to kind of see that as Bianca's in the ring looking on. But the women kind of in this War Games kind of feel like they got the short end a little bit in terms of storyline, in terms of reasoning why, in terms of making it make sense as to how these teams got formulated.
Yeah, for sure. It just, like you said, they now have the task of explaining how this all works and how this all makes sense. And good luck, because you got a week to do it. I don't know if you're going to be able to do it because, like I said, a lot of mental gymnastics to try to make these things work at this moment in time. Things that are working or things that I feel are working, me and you are a little bit different here. You weren't a huge fan of this new championship for the women. I am so pro this. I think this is awesome. We've got a tournament for the United States Women's World Championship, and on Friday Night SmackDown, Chelsea Green came away with a big win, and she now advances to the semifinals in this match. Bayley is already in the semis. We're going to have Jade Cargill taking on Michin, taking on Piper Niven in a triple threat to see who advances out of that part of the bracket. And then we'll have Naomi, Tiffany Stratton, and Elektra Lopez advancing out of that side of the bracket to get to the other semi. I think Chelsea Green is the person who needs to come away with this belt. I think if we go back a couple of weeks, actually, we go back a couple of months, Chelsea Green has been putting in fantastic work. Chelsea Green has looked incredible in the ring. I think she is a character that a lot of people are behind, a lot of people love. You've seen the crowd reaction when she got the pin on Friday night. Everybody is behind her. I think when you look at the other side of the bracket with the Jade Cargill, the Michin, the Piper Niven, and then the Naomi, the Tiffany Stratton, and the Elektra Lopez, I think when you look at those sides of the bracket, you can kind of start giving reasons why people will advance, but why they won't win this. I think when it comes down to it, Bayley doesn't necessarily need this second championship, right? Not unless you really want to accentuate and add to her resume. That's the only reason why Bayley wins this championship. I think this is the prime spot for somebody like a Chelsea Green, who is over, but still very mid-card and not quite on the same level. Nobody quite takes her serious enough to be on that same level as, say, a Bayley, as, say, a Bianca Belair, as, say, I guess Liv Morgan at this point. Like, I still find it a little bit tough. Like, I know Liv Morgan does a fantastic job, but I still find it just a little bit tough with Liv Morgan to kind of put her in that echelon of a Rhea Ripley. But I think this is the prime spot for a wrestler like a Chelsea Green. And I feel like she should be the winner of this belt. I think when you look at that other side of the bracket, I think Michin ends up defeating Jade Cargill and Piper Niven. Now, look, Jade Cargill's been removed because she has been beaten up because, like you said, fantastic visual with somebody taking her out before War Games. We'll find out who that was and what that was. This could be part of that storyline that adds to the breaking up of Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair. But I think Michin comes out of that. And then I don't see a reason for Naomi to be involved in this. Tiffany Stratton already has her meal ticket to get a championship, so I don't see her winning this. So it might be Elektra Lopez, might be Naomi. But then when you kind of get through the finals there, if you're really looking to highlight a new star, Michin should go over either Naomi or Elektra Lopez, and Chelsea Green should go over Bayley. And that would set your finals up. And I think Chelsea Green would be the one who comes out of this. And I think she is the right choice right now for this. If you want to call it a mid-card championship, you want to call it a secondary belt, whatever you want to call it, I think she's the right choice to be the new women's United States champion. What are your thoughts on her being the choice to kind of be the inaugural champion of this brand new belt for the women?
I agree with you 100%. It's the right call. She's the most over. She's done the most work. Kind of feels like, for the purpose of having this kind of title, I think it's perfect for her. I think that she's done the work online. She puts in so much work to get herself over. The work that she's done in the ring has gotten better. She's taken nasty bumps, and I just think that she's put together everything that you need to be acknowledged by a company. So I would be shocked if it wasn't. I don't know if you saw online when she crossed 1 million followers on Instagram, she was on a flight, and the captain of the plane even did a little bit with her and said, hey, our future U.S. women's champion is on this flight, Delta. Welcome, Chelsea Green. And she's hamming it up. It's very funny. And I just think she does everything that you would need to give this person a title. And like I said, it would be a disappointment if the tournament ends and she's not the winner.
Yeah, I'd be pretty upset. When you go back to the Money in the Bank championship match or the Money in the Bank title match to get the briefcase, she was the one who stole the show. Like, Tiffany Stratton looked great in that match, but Chelsea Green was the one who stole the show in that match. And she's had a couple of matches like that since. And to me, it just makes all the sense in the world to give her this title and to make her that champion, and then just kind of give her a little bit of run, see what she does. I think she's done a fantastic job working this annoying little heel character that she has. I think she's got a good look. I think she cuts really good promos. I think she does a really good job. So kudos to her, and we'll see where this goes, and we'll see what takes place and what happens here. Something else that was, I guess, kudos, bravo. I think we got a masterclass in promo work between Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens on Friday Night SmackDown. I thought these two guys going head-to-head with each other on the microphone, I thought it was great. I wanted to get your thoughts on what you thought of this promo between these two guys, because I thought it was absolutely incredible. When Kevin Owens kind of works his way from the back of the building to the ring, and he's getting more and more and more emotional, more and more amped up. And he tells you why he's mad at Cody, why he hates, his words, Cody Rhodes. It makes you be like, yeah, that makes sense. I get it. I get where you're coming from. Like, I totally understand. I side with you. And now it's put back onto Cody to make you get back on the babyface's side. And Cody basically lays it out for Kevin Owens, like, you are the master of self-sabotage. You are the one who always gets in your own way. You like to point the finger at everybody else. You're always the victim. I thought it was a great job by Cody Rhodes as well. And then Cody being upset when he goes to the back, takes it out on Carmelo Hayes. I thought this was a fantastic job to really help build this match between these two guys. And mind you, this is the first time that these two guys have come face to face with each other as we're kind of building to this. It's been a lot of Cody cutting promos into a computer camera screen, and it's been a lot of Cody Rhodes going down to the ring and just kind of bitching about Kevin Owens. I thought this was fantastically done. What were your thoughts on this promo between these two guys?
Yeah, great masterful job of advancing where they are. And it sets the tone as to why, Kevin Owens is upset, being that, Cody Rhodes has done some things with Roman and all the impact that they've had, the friendship, that maybe some jealousy too, some undertone of jealousy as well, being that they're supposed to be friends, yet Cody has done stuff with Jay. Has in the past, remember, Cody Rhodes indicated that he felt like, hey, Jay was a valuable member to bring over to Raw. So I just think that there's a lot of good passion to explain why, and everybody knew, but to hear it visually and to see it, face to face was great. And it just sets the tone, because I think we said on this podcast, Cody Rhodes needs some opponents and some believable opponents. And right now, Kevin Owens is the man to stand across from him, where you got the total package: believable, passionate enough, and can deliver another great match in the ring.
Yeah, I look forward to this. And this was one of those matches where a couple weeks ago I was like, this is where we're going to end up, but we'll see how we get there. I wasn't really into it. I'm into it now. This promo sold me. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. If you are a young wrestler in the business and you're looking how to cut a promo, how to make it believable, go watch this. These guys had emotion. These guys had a story to tell. These guys had logic. it all made sense, and it all really, really worked really, really well. Was there anything else that you took out of Monday Night Raw or Friday Night SmackDown that you wanted to touch on before we get into this upcoming AEW pay-per-view and what took place on Dynamite this past week?
No, I just think that continuing to highlight LA Knight's always good. I think his U.S. title run is very intriguing moving forward. I'm liking the mid card. I like to see what Carmelo Hayes has been doing. I feel like the work that Dom has been doing and the return of Rhea Ripley was pretty sweet last time. So I just think that everybody that's been it's like one of those deals where everybody that's in their role is pretty much shining in their role, and it's a nice mix of good mid card stories and some hot fire at the top of the card. So it's been some very intriguing stuff with WWE, and it's fueling what everybody expects to be a nice run to the end of the year and into the new year. So it's just been fun to see how everybody's been kind of accepting their role and moving forward. So it's been a good 2 weeks for WWE.
All right, well, let's shift gears, pun intended, to Dynamite. We had our go-home show for Full Gear 2024. I wanted to get your thoughts on this Dynamite show and kind of how it sets up for Full Gear. We also had Rampage that took place on Friday night. These were the two go-home shows for this pay-per-view. This is one of their B-level pay-per-views. This is not one of their big ones. If you want to call it a core four or something like that, this is not one of those. But this is still a show that is pretty good regularly and is one of their highlighted pay-per-views. I wanted to get your thoughts on what you took out of these go-home shows.
Yeah, well, I'm thankful, for AEW that we didn't record last week, because the Dynamite prior to this week's was probably one of the weirdest put together shows. It just kind of flew into segment and made no sense, and the matches didn't hit. The crowd hated it. It was awful. I thought maybe one of the worst ones they ever did, and I was just like, man, they got to do so much better with the go home show. It was a little bit better, but like I said, we always believe that our purpose, we've said here on this podcast, that the purpose of a go home show is to make me as a casual buy the pay-per-view. No chance in hell based on that show would I have bought it. And I just have to highlight it. I know it's a little bit away from the pay-per-view because it's a new person, but I put it in bold letters here in my notes. If you're Bobby Lashley, I understand you want to be made big, you want to be awesome, you want to do the things that are awesome, but I just thought debuting against Cheeseburger and the other guy was just like, man, I just thought it was it felt like a hokey superstars thing to do, that it felt like it was a 25-year-old bit that has been played out to the degree that you got to find a better way to debut Bobby Lashley. And then I'm just curious, the question I had for you, because like I said, Bobby Lashley is going to do his thing. He wants something different. He wants to be featured. Fine, but you don't need to be featured in a cupcake match. What do you make of the Costco guys and the Rizzler? Because I just put question mark, like, I don't know how to feel. I get their popularity. My kids can sing me the song. I try to joke with them and sing it to them, telling them that I'm the guy in the world with the ultimate Riz, and they look at me like, oh no, I'm in that mode now, and I can't wait for you to experience that in a decade, where you can embarrass the shit out of your kids by telling them the shit that they talk about, and you try to act like you know what the hell they're talking about. And I'm like, yeah, I'm the Rizzler full of Riz. And they look at me like, Dad, don't ever say that. And coming from me, you can see how funny that shit is. But to see them on AEW, I'm like, like, I get it. I understand clearly. WWE and WCW would always use Jay Leno and Rodman to gain mainstream attention. But WCW was at like a different point in their history. Like, for AEW to rely upon these guys it seems cheap. It doesn't seem like the right fit, but I get it. One of the guys is a wrestling dude and it kind of has some experience in the business. But it just, to me, I don't think it's having the intended consequence, because it's basically saying, hey, we got a D-level company. Can you help us make it a C+? And it's like you need to set the foundation of your company before you start adding the layers and the lights. It's like basically putting Christmas lights on a 40-year-old trailer. And you're like, ooh, look at the lights. but the awning is coming down and the weeds are 40 feet high. Okay, they literally put Christmas tree on a trailer. All right, there you go. That's what they did. And look, it blinks. Those are my takeaways. If I were a casual wrestling fan, I would not buy Full Gear based on the go home shows.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And I want to save my thoughts on the Costco guy and all of that for the predictions because I've got some very strong feelings, I think. But look, I last week's Dynamite show was so fast paced and they didn't allow anything to breathe and it moved quickly, but I didn't necessarily mind it, right? I thought it was good enough. I thought it was for AEW standards, and this is the problem. For AEW standards, I thought it was good enough, and I thought it was decent. This week's show, if you're trying to get me to buy a pay-per-view, I'm not. You didn't do enough to get me interested. When you've got Bobby Lashley going out there and beating up Cheeseburger, I was excited to see Cheeseburger because I love Cheeseburger from ROH, but he went out there and he destroyed Cheeseburger. Like, what are we doing here? What the hell? The only thing I thought they did good on this program was they added a little bit of intrigue to the Swerve and Bobby Lashley story, right? Like Swerve Strickland basically running and gunning and popping and sniping Bobby Lashley with a chain around his fist. Okay, cool. Makes for a little bit of an interesting dynamic. Orange Cassidy at the very end of the program after getting duct taped and basically bitch slapped around by the Death Riders, because that's now what the BCC is called. That was interesting, right? Like, it just shows that you can't break Orange Cassidy. But otherwise, I thought this was such a shit show for one of your pay-per-views. And when you get into the pay-per-view, we've got 10 matches on this pay-per-view. We've got one of these matches made over Twitter, and we've got one of these matches made with the Costco guy. I don't even know who the hell that is. I don't even know what that is. I'm glad that your kids helped you understand who that was, because I've got zero clue who this guy is. And the promo that he cut on Dynamite did not make me want to watch this at all. I was pretty frustrated by it. And if we can just get right into predictions. For the 0 hour, you've got the Costco guy AJ taking on QT Marshall. I think it tells you a little bit about the life support that this company is sometimes on, when you've got this guy, the Costco guy, and you've got his 12-year-old kid, and you've got somebody named the Riz coming to do something with something. This is a guy who QT Marshall is wrestling. Like, to me, it doesn't make sense. And look, QT Marshall is a really good wrestler. QT Marshall is a really good producer. QT Marshall has a lot of talent, and yet this guy is going to be in a match against this guy. And I don't even know who the hell the Costco guy is, and he does nothing to make me even interested in finding out who he is, which is part of the problem. When it's all said and done, that is part of the problem. I've got zero interest in this match. I've got zero interest in this guy. I've got no clue why for the 0 hour, why for timing in a pay-per-view, you're giving it to this dude. Doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand it. And to me, it's pretty frustrating, because this is a company and this is a show and this is a program that you and I watch. This is stuff that me and you have to invest time in. And sometimes it just feels like you and I care a little bit more about the product than the dude who owns the damn company. And that is frustrating. That is early 2000s WCW-esque feelings for me, and that pisses me off. All that being said, we get right into the picks. I'm going to go with this loser, the Costco guy. I've got no clue who he is, but QT Marshall is a company soldier, so he puts over crumb bums like this dude who just screams boom a lot.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. Look, I get it. He's the kid. The Rizzler is a TikTok sensation, so clearly all the kids know him. They're trying to appeal to a bigger audience, and I get it. It's a fun song. It's crazy, but it's this, third grader that has kind of made a name for himself by putting shit out on the internet. It's funny, it's catchy, but it doesn't apply to wrestling. I mean, it's just like I said, it's crazy to do that. It cheapens it. QT Marshall's like, oh God, I got these guys. But yeah, you're right. The Costco guy gets the W, baby.
All right, our next match. And look, there's going to be other 0-hour matches. You know how AEW does this. All of a sudden, they'll make an announcement an hour and a half before the show, and now we've got 3 or 4 0-hour shows where they're just basically cramming everybody in the back into a match to get them on the pay-per-view. So there will be more. For right now, this is what the card is that we have. So this is all we have for the 0 hour at this moment in time. We've got a 4-way match for the AEW tag team titles. You got Private Party defending against the Outrunners, who are the hottest new tag team, the House of Black, and then the Acclaim. Seems like House of Black was last minute inserted. They weren't supposed to be part of this match, but now they are part of this match. Look, Private Party just got these belts. Private Party super over. I think you're trying to do something with House of Black to make them feel a little bit more relevant, because the House of Black have been one of those tag teams that have jumped on the scene, and then for some reason, whether it was backstage politics or it was something else, they were very in your face, and then they were not so much in your face. Whether it was Malachi Black asking for his release so he can go back to WWE when Triple H took over, or there are other things going on. The House of Black at one point really, really hot, and they seem like they've never been able to get back to that level. The Acclaim, I still find them entertaining. I think some of their shtick has kind of worn thin. The Outrunners, like I said, hottest new tag team. They are like a retro 80s tag team. They are very interesting, very, very fun. I think all that being said, Private Party retains their belts.
No doubt about it. Private Party. It's good for this kind of match for the likes of the Acclaimed and House of Black to just kind of get over a little bit more, to kind of just do their thing, to be able to just make a continued name for themselves. Because like you said, Private Party's the champs. They're going to win. But I just think that the others just got to do a little bit better job, because they've been slipping below mid-card status.
All right, our next match, we've got MJF taking on Roderick Strong. This, at one point, I thought it was going to be a triple threat match with Adam Cole and Roddy taking on MJF. Did not happen. You've got MJF taking on Roderick Strong this past week on Dynamite. MJF went to where other people have gone in the past, and they've talked about Roderick Strong's past, and they talked about his parents and how his mom shot his dad and how his parents were both addicts and yada, yada, yada. I don't know if we necessarily needed it. I don't think it really added anything to the story. Roderick Strong came out to cut a promo at the top of the entrance ramp, and I don't think it did anything to sell this match. I think MJF wins this. I could see Adam Cole getting involved in this match, but I think in the end, MJF wins it. Whether it's deceitful or not remains to be seen, but I think MJF comes away with the victory.
Yeah, I agree. If it does go the other way, then you could see maybe the setup of the continued feud with MJF and Adam Cole. But I just think that MJF has to win this in a pay-per-view where you want to have your best guys go over. MJF has to win.
You could also see Kyle O'Reilly possibly get involved. He somehow has worked his way into this storyline, whether it be between Roddy and Adam Cole, or Adam Cole and MJF. And I really don't know where that's going or what's happening with that. But you could see him work his way into this match as well. Next, we've got Bobby Lashley taking on Swerve Strickland. How do you see this one playing out? Bobby Lashley's had one match in AEW. He beat up Cheeseburger and some other guy in a squash match. Swerve has been running around sniping him. Swerve, one of the hottest names in AEW at one point. I feel like his heat has kind of come down a little bit. It might have been on a 10 or 11. He still gets the crowd to pop. I feel like now it's probably closer to an 8 or a 9. Bobby Lashley, he's new. He's fresh meat. He's a lot of it. The guy's built like a brick shithouse. Who gets the win here? Bobby Lashley with maybe a little bit of help from MVP and the Hurt Syndicate, or does Swerve claim that it is his house and show that it's his house?
Nope, you gotta put over. The best for business is you bring this new guy in and you got this new faction. They have to dominate. So it has to be Bobby Lashley winning, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've got Bobby Lashley winning too. Like you said, it just, booking sense wise, right? You just paid a bunch of money for this guy. He's had one match where he beat up, and look, not trying to be demeaning to Cheeseburger, he's beat up nobodies, right? So in order to help elevate this guy and make him arguably your baddest heel on your roster, you got to have him beat one of the biggest faces, and Swerve is one of your bigger faces. So I have Bobby Lashley winning this match. Next, we've got Jay White taking on Hangman Page. There's been a couple of different little vignettes, a couple different promos showing some stuff that has happened either over in New Japan or in ROH between Jay White and Hangman Page, showing that Jay White always has the upper hand on Hangman Page. Does Jay White get the upper hand on Saturday when he takes on Hangman Page? How do you see this one playing out?
Well, this is the one where I say both guys probably need the win, so it's just the hardest to predict. I feel like Jay winning that first time kind of skews it a little bit, so I think that Hangman moving forward kind of needs to be in the bigger stuff, but at the same time, Jay White's a big star. So I'm just going with my gut feeling that who needs this more to propel storylines and to be bigger. I just think that Adam Hangman Page wins it.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm gonna go Jay White. Here's the thing. I'm in the same boat as you, right? It's one of those things where it's like 49-51. Hangman Page has lost a few matches now, back to back to back to back. To me, it feels like he needs a win because he's lost a couple of these big matches. That being said, Jay White, we talked about when Jay White came in and how hot he was and how he was awesome and how he was super over and how he was one of the biggest names. And he comes to AEW and next thing you know, the guy's basically wrestling in a closet and nobody cares. I feel like Jay White, to get him help elevate and get him back on that stage and get him at least heated up, maybe not red hot, but get him heated up. He needs a win here over Hangman Page. I've got Jay White winning this match. Next, we've got Will Ospreay taking on Kyle Fletcher. Now, Kyle Fletcher's whole thing is, I'm better than you. I am not going to be you, Will Ospreay. In the build-up to this on Dynamite, you had Will Ospreay hit Mark Davis with his elbow as Kyle Fletcher made some maneuvers to kind of make that thing happen. I think that's going to play a bit of a role. Kyle Fletcher has been telling Mark Davis some stuff, talking in his ear. Maybe now you've got the groundwork laid where he turns on Will Ospreay and costs Will Ospreay the match. I think you're trying to build a star in a guy like Kyle Fletcher. I think you can have Kyle Fletcher get the win. Maybe it's not clean. Maybe Don Callis or maybe somebody from the Don Callis family plays a bit of a role in this. But I don't think Will Ospreay gets the victory. I think Kyle Fletcher needs it more, and I think Kyle Fletcher ends up leaving this match with the dub.
No, I don't think so. I think this is a star. This is a star pay-per-view, and Will Ospreay's the star. And I just think that if you're going to go down that road, then you're going down the Takeshita road, the Okada road, where, look, man, I don't need to be seeing Will Ospreay take losses unless it's against A++ individuals and characters. So I think that culmination of feuds they need to go to the biggest stars, and you got to keep Will Ospreay strong. So I'm going with Will Ospreay in this one.
All right. It's two already where we differ. I wonder how many more we're going to be different on here. Next, we've got our TNT Championship match. We've got Jack Perry defending his title against Daniel Garcia. You got to see this Reservoir Dogs-esque video of Daniel Garcia taking Jack Perry to this burnt-out warehouse, and he was going to use a crowbar on him, and then to show that he's better than him, he just beat up his beat-up, dilapidated truck. Kind of left me saying, okay, really? This is what we got. But okay, this is AEW. Let's go with it. So, I don't know, man. How do you see this one playing out? Jack Perry retain his title, or does Daniel Garcia finally get a belt?
Right? Is it that time? It doesn't seem like it's that time for Daniel Garcia, but it kind of feels, to me, in my mind, in terms of character development, I just feel like the company's kind of, giving him an opportunity with a contract. I think that, Perry's run has kind of been what it's been. Can it get much better? So I think they're gonna I think maybe one of the few title changes this card. I think Daniel Garcia wins it.
Yeah, I think Daniel Garcia wins it as well. I've been unimpressed with Jack Perry as the TNT champion. I don't think it's necessarily have worked. I think this is a time for you to make that switch. I think Daniel Garcia gets it. I think Daniel Garcia goes on a bit of a run. I think this can also play a bit of a storyline with Okada and the Young Bucks and kind of that group dissolving and those guys all just kind of breaking up and going their own way. Remember, the Young Bucks have already left the company. The Young Bucks are no longer there. They are on a hiatus. This is a good way for you to get Jack Perry maybe out of that mix. And now you've got Okada kind of doing this lone wolf thing where he's running solo. So this could be a really good way to kind of splinter all these guys off, let them all kind of go in their own direction. Our next match, we've got our AEW International Championship match. We've got Takeshita taking on Ricochet. Here's the thing. You got no build for this on television. You got no announcement for this match on television. This was announced on Twitter at 9:30 p.m. on Thursday by Tony Khan. Tony Khan, what the hell are you doing? This is supposed to be one of your biggest championships. Takeshita was supposed to be one of your biggest guys if you didn't botch his booking. Ricochet was one of the bigger name guys that you got to come over from the other company. He was a guy who made magic with one of the biggest guys that you have on your roster in Will Ospreay. And somehow you screw this up and you make an announcement on Twitter? You announce that there's going to be a match for this on Twitter. You have a television program. You have multiple television programs. And you do this on Twitter? I wouldn't even know that this was a thing if I didn't do this podcast with you. Because unlike you are very much into the social media. I am not very much into the social media. I will every now and then respond to something that you tag me in. I do not care to go down the cesspool that is social media. You announce one of your biggest matches, one of your supposed best championship titles that you have with one of the bigger stars on your roster and one of the bigger free agents that you were able to bring in. You do it on Twitter and you do it on a Thursday night at 9:30 while you're cracked out on your 8th pot of coffee. What are we doing, bro? What are we this to me? This is so AEW. It is stupid to me. Takeshita, Ricochet, who wins this match? Obviously, it doesn't matter to Tony Khan because he's doing it on Twitter at 9:30 on a Thursday, so I don't know why it should matter to us.
Yeah, it's wild to see that that's how these two get together, but it's going to be great. I think it's going to be a great match, but in the end, the crazy part is both need this win also equally, and who gets over? You know, to me, I just think that Takeshita's run is still early, so I give it to Takeshita, but it's one of those matches where Ricochet is going to shine with all the high spots and the match he's going to tell. This one has a chance to be match of the night.
Yeah, I think Takeshita wins. Again, I think you're trying to build something here with Takeshita. It's going to be one of those spots though where Ricochet can really shine and really prove himself and show why he was that high price free agent that they brought in. To me, it's just bad booking again, man. Just like AEW gets in their own way all the damn time, which is why if all the reports of what Jon Moxley's trying to do is true, I'm all for it. And we'll talk about that here in a moment after we get through this TBS Championship match prediction. Mercedes Moné defending her title against Chris Statlander. You see that there is a bit of a breaking between Mercedes Moné and Camille. Chris Statlander, I feel like this was somebody that you really could have helped elevate and build your women's division around. I've always felt like Britt Baker was the face of that division, and I felt like Chris Statlander was some homegrown talent that you could have really helped elevate up. Chris Statlander was, if anything, Chris Statlander was that solid piece in your mid card where you were going to get really great matches, and she could bubble up every now and again, and she could get into the main event, and she could hold a title, and it would be credible, and it would make sense. Always felt like that was her spot, always her role. And to me, it felt like they've kind of botched that. I felt like when Willow Nightingale got super hot, they didn't do a good job with help elevating her, and now she's injured. And it just, to me, it feels like this women's division usually gets neglected. You go out and you throw a bunch of money at somebody like Mercedes Moné, who has a real hard time connecting with the crowd. You can see it. You can feel it. It's just not there. She's your champion. All that being said, I feel like Chris Statlander gets the win. Take that belt off of Mercedes Moné. Let's reevaluate what we're doing with Mercedes Moné because I just don't feel like it's working.
Man, that's tough, right? Man, this is a tough one. Oh, you feel like this is a title change. I feel like Mercedes is calling this thing with everything going on. I just don't see it. I just see that Mercedes Moné is going to run the division for a while and be a champion. So I just think that to be the CEO, you got to win matches. So I think it's going to be clearly Mercedes Moné retaining her title and continuing to do C+ promos every week.
What if Camille plays a part and takes Mercedes out?
I think
hits her from the backside and allows Chris Statlander to get the win. I don't know. It could play out a couple different ways. I understand what you're saying with the money that they're paying her to do those C+ promos and to be that D- champion that she's been. It would make sense for her to keep the belt. Wouldn't surprise me. To me, again, kind of a coin flip. Mine's maybe a little bit more wishful thinking than actual. I'm thinking more with my heart than with my head here. But we'll see how it plays out. Next, we've got our main event. It's our AEW World Championship match. We've got Jon Moxley taking on Orange Cassidy. Like I said, I liked what we kind of got at the end of Dynamite. I thought it kind of showed that you can't break Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy is going to be what he's going to be. I think the big issue with the build-up to that spot was the match against Wheeler Yuta, where Wheeler Yuta had probably 70% of that match. He had 70% of the offense. So if this is your number one guy who's supposed to defend the company, who's supposed to beat up Jon Moxley, he can't even get through the fifth best guy in the Death Rider, depending on where you put Mina Shafir. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's Jon Moxley's your number one guy, Claudio is your number two guy, Pac's your number three guy, it's kind of a coin flip between Wheeler Yuta and Marina Shafir. You know what I'm saying? And that fourth or fifth guy in that group just got 70% of the offense on Orange Cassidy. You want me to buy in that Orange Cassidy can beat Jon Moxley? It's not working. It's not helping. Now, look, Jon Moxley has control over his character. He's got creative license to do what he wants with all of this. There have been multiple stories that have come out, multiple reports that Jon Moxley's pissed about how this company's been running. And if Jon Moxley can get things whipped into shape and get things figured out, I'm all about it. There was a story that was told where Jon Moxley went to one of the producers and was like, what are we doing with this? Why is this? What is going on here? And the producer was like, it's bottom of the card. It doesn't even matter. He only has to say 2 lines. And Jon Moxley's like, that's not the point. You're not elevating him. It doesn't make sense. What are you doing? And after that, Jon Moxley's had a little bit of a red ass, and he's kind of taken things over. So if Jon Moxley can fix this company and get it back to where we're not making fun of it every other selection that we're doing here, and we're not talking about how certain things are shit all the damn time, I'm all for it, because I want to go back to those days when AEW made sense, and AEW was that company that was giving WWE a really good run for its money. All that being said, I got Jon Moxley retaining his belt and winning this and coming away the victor.
Very well said. I agree. AEW's got to have a shift in regards to making things make sense, long-term storytelling, and production in the ring. So Jon Moxley is the right guy to win it, and let's hope that a good match, a good pay-per-view can elevate AEW back into some form of relevancy, and at least in regards to some online criticism, hopefully some of the, because there's some very loud vocal podcasters that are just ranting and raving about how bad AEW is, and you just hope that they're able to kind of build some momentum moving forward.
Yeah, and look, man, I feel bad because we show up every week, and I feel like we kind of take shots at it, but I think it's just our frustration because we got to watch this shit. Then we got to figure out what we want to talk about from it. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it's easy because it is so bad where it's like, okay, look, this is just egregious. We got to talk about it, but it's not like we want to bag on the product. You and I were huge AEW fans when it first started, like monster AEW fans. I remember us watching that first pay-per-view that they did, right? Like way before they were even a company. I was watching that in my mom's basement. I went upstairs with tears in my eyes as Cody Rhodes and Dustin Rhodes fought each other. Like, it was so well done. We want this company to succeed. We want it to be good. Hopefully this is a good pay-per-view. The one thing that we can say, AEW generally shits the bed with their storytelling week to week for their television product, but their pay-per-view product is usually A+ work. Hopefully this is another A+. We look at calling the card. I've got a 2-point lead, 9.5 to 7.5. We go back quickly through the picks. We both have Jon Moxley retaining his championship. We've got a little bit of a difference here with Chris Statlander and Mercedes Moné. I've got Chris Statlander winning the TBS championship. We both have Takeshita coming away with his international championship. We're split when it comes to the TNT championship. You've got Jack Perry. Is that right? Or did you have Daniel Garcia?
I have the new champion in.
You have Daniel Garcia.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I wrote something wrong. So we both have Daniel Garcia coming away with the TNT championship. When it comes to the Will Ospreay Kyle Fletcher match, You've got Will Ospreay. I've got Kyle Fletcher. I feel like you got to build a new star here. When it comes to Jay White and Hangman Page, you've got Hangman Page saying, I need to get another win because I've had a couple of losses. And I say Jay White needs to win a little bit more to get him heated up, to get him back to that red hot status that he once was at. We both have Bobby Lashley beating Swerve Strickland. We both have MJF beating Roderick Strong. We both have Private Party retaining their belts. And we both have the Costco guy, AJ, beating QT Marshall. And that is your Full Gear predictions. 10 matches in, it's probably going to balloon up to 12, 13, maybe even 14. All that being said, what was your show of the week, sir?
SmackDown with the Kevin Owens promo and CM Punk, by far best show of the week.
I agree with you 110%. You want some news and notes before we get out of here?
Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
Did we get confirmation on something we already knew? Well, maybe. In recent days, recent reports have confirmed that the new president-elect Donald Trump will put Linda McMahon in his cabinet as the U.S. Secretary of Education. McMahon has been a major contributor to the Republican Party and has worked closely with Trump during his last tenure as president of the United States. In a detailed report by the Washington Post, Linda McMahon's lawyer confirmed that she and Vince McMahon are separated. This confirms numerous reports of the two still being married, but not together. It also seems like an attempt to further distance herself from her disgraced husband, who is currently embroiled in multiple lawsuits. And finally, the WWE Network is becoming obsolete. For many people outside of the United States, the WWE Network is still a platform used to view WWE content. Well, that's about to change. The WWE partnership with Netflix, WWE is making a dramatic shift with its international business model. An email was sent out this week to subscribers, and it reads, on January 1st, 2025, WWE Network will no longer be available in your area. After January 1st, Netflix will be the new exclusive home of WWE. Netflix will bring WWE's electrifying content all to one place, including weekly shows, Monday Night Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, plus premium live events such as WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, and SummerSlam. Many of WWE's top moments, along with historic PLEs and select programming, will be available on Netflix beginning January 1st. Monday Night Raw will make the big jump to Netflix starting on January 6th of 2025. The thing is, with the international Netflix plan, it's not going to have all of the content that the WWE Network has. It's going to be select pay-per-views, select programming. It's going to be certain things are going to make that transition and be hubbed on Netflix, not everything like the WWE Network had. So it'd be interesting to see what makes that crossover and makes that bridge to Netflix, while WWE Network, which was so revolutionary when it first came out and was one of the greatest bargains, I think, if you're a wrestling fan, because it was like not a lot of money and you got all this content. It was great. Is dying this slow death and becoming slowly obsolete as WWE kind of pushes away from holding and hosting its own content and giving it and selling the rights to other places for a very premium dollar. So smart business model, maybe. We'll see what happens and what's kind of in store for the future. But that's going to do it for this week's Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. That's where you can find our great content. The staple of the network, Doc and Jock, a Michigan podcast, as they're blowing up, as they got somebody to flip, just like, basically like stealing someone from AEW was the monumental feat that the Michigan Wolverines were able to accomplish with Bryce Underwood. This week you're going to want to listen to the Michigan podcast. And then always, on the weekends, the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast. I can't wait for next week. It's going to be stacked. We got to review Full Gear, and then it's the War Games Survivor Series preview show. Can't wait to see how we think it's going to shake out and how everything's going to go down. It's going to be a fun weekend. Thanksgiving weekend, as always, will be a fun time as both companies try to move forward towards the end of the year, the final year push, and we'll be here along the way to break it all down, the great world of professional wrestling. I can't wait to fire it up next week for the next episode of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast.